So let's talk about project 2.2.4, Secure the Server. In this project, we're going to be going through the process of doing some other tasks for making our web server secure. Specifically, we're going to talk about SMTP, as well as something called a loose lips problem. So the first thing is SMTP. If you Google what SMTP stands for, it's Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. It's a very common and error-prone messaging protocol. And one thing it's going to suggest us to do in the directions here is look up something called the National Vulnerability Database. So if we go to NVD and do a search on it and look at vulnerabilities, we can type in SMTP and see if this is actually a vulnerable protocol. And yes, there are 383 different records here of vulnerabilities. This is bad. It's a reason why maybe SMTP should not be used. So if you do the next step of opening up the lab, it'll bring up our login machine. And if we go to connections, we can open up the web server. Now, if our web server is doing what it's supposed to, it should only really be showing web pages. There's no reason it should also be functioning as a mail server. The more things you have open on one computer, the more likely that a hacker can find a way in to do bad things. So what we're going to do is open up PowerShell, and there's a command we can run to determine if SMTP is running, and that command is going to be this one. So the main parts of the command are netstat followed by -an. And if you hit enter right now, you would see just a wall of text. So instead of seeing all that text on the screen, we're going to do something called a redirect command. So that's the greater than symbol, and I think of it as an arrow pointing to the right. And we're going to take all the output of the netstat command and put it into a file. Specifically, we want that file to be on the desktop, and let's name it netstat_output.txt. So it's just this command right here. So if I hit enter, wow, this happened to me before too. I don't know why that locks up. All right, so I'm going to copy this. Nope, maybe not. Maybe it's going to make me type it all in again. Okay. I don't think it'll let me copy it. All right. I'm going to quit out of PowerShell and do it one more time. That's the second time that's happened to me. Yeah. Oh, it let me paste it. Beautiful. So I pasted it in the command I want to run. I hit enter. Why is power? Oh, there it goes. I pounded the enter key a whole bunch and then it ran. Not that I advise you pound the enter key, but I was successful. So here's the file. You can see it appeared on the desktop. I actually called it netstate instead of netstat, but that doesn't really matter. It's just the name of the file. If you open it up, you will see a whole bunch of data. And what this is telling you is all of the different ports that the web server is listening for data on. And some of these are important for a web server and we shouldn't turn off. For example, port 80 needs to be on for sure. Otherwise, we would never be able to serve any web pages. But there might be some other ports in here that we don't want. And specifically, we're supposed to look for the port that belongs to SMTP. And it's not very clear from the netstat output which of these ports is SMTP. So if you click on this link here to go to Microsoft Ports and Protocols, or you can Google it, we just need to look through this document for SMTP. If you search for SMTP, you'll see that it is port 25. And you can see that port 25 is indeed on. So our web server is also supporting the SMTP protocol right now and acting as a web server. So that's bad. And we're going to want to turn that off because it is increasing our attack surface. Another thing we're going to investigate is something called loose-lipped error messages. So if we go to this link on our login page, we're going to see what happens. So I'm going to minimize the server, open up Chrome, and I'm going to visit the page 172.30.0.15. So I'm going to the web server, and the place I'm going to visit is fnf.html. So fnf.html. And if I do that, it'll say file not found. It's actually not a file that is on the server. Now, the reason we're doing this is to see if there's any information on here that we don't want to provide. And one thing that it looks like we're providing that might be not necessary for a user to know is this one that says physical path. So this tells the user, for whatever reason, that the web server has a C drive, and inside the C drive is an init pub folder. And that's potentially information that a hacker could use to do some form of an attack. It may not be enough by itself, but if the hacker can put together enough pieces of information, they might be able to perform a successful attack. So, yeah, we did that. So we're going to go through the process of trying to disable SMTP and loose-lipped errors. So this is actually in a very weird spot because it's actually a different section of the server manager than what you used in the activity 2.2.3. So I'm going to go back into the web server, and what I'm going to do next, minimize that, is open up the IIS server manager. And if you remember before when this opened, where we would go to disable a service might be under Manage. That was for FTP. But for SMTP, we're going to go under Tools. And before we picked the IIS Manager, we're going to pick the IIS 6.0 Manager to disable SMTP. So we'll wait a second to see if it opens up. There it is. And then we're going to, if I remember right, click on the target window. Yep. So click on target window, and you can see that the SMTP virtual server is running. Well, there's a little stop button here, so I'm going to stop that server. And now that this is turned red here, we're hopeful that means that it has been turned off. So it still says it's running, which is a little bit frightening to me. Let me close out of this. And let's find out if I actually disabled SMTP. So back on the client machine. Oh no, I didn't want to go back. Sorry, it's going to stay on the web server. I'm going to delete this old netstat output file. And back in PowerShell, here's PowerShell, I'm going to hit up. And I'm going to run this command again, which generates another text file. And you can see that port 25 is no longer listed in one of my listening port numbers. So that means SMTP has been turned off, and we have decreased the likelihood that a hacker could get to our web server. All right, so that's the first part. The second thing we're going to look at is loose-lipped error. So if you remember, our error message was showing off too much information about our web server. So to fix that, we're going to go into the other IIS manager again. So I know this is confusing why there's two of them. I don't need that anymore. So under Tools, I'm going to go into the regular IIS manager. And we're going to look at the target computer. And specifically, I believe we want to click on Sites. Yep. And we're going to do the default website, which I could also do right here. That's what I want. All right, so if you look at these options, the one that looks the most useful is Error Pages. So we're going to open up Error Pages, and we're going to do one setting here. We're going to do Edit Feature Settings. Now, I don't remember if I have to select them or not. Let's see. Yeah, it doesn't say. Oh wait, did I read that wrong? Oh yeah, I'm right. So I'm going to select them all. Yeah, I need to select them all. That's right. So if did I do this one at a time? Nope, I guess I'm wrong. So I'm going to click Edit Feature Settings. You don't have to select one at a time. Right now it's doing a detailed errors, and that's what we don't like. So we're going to switch this to custom error pages and hit OK. All right, so that should have changed it for, I believe, all of them. Let's see if I'm right. So if I edit this one, yep, see, it says custom error pages. I go to 404, edit, custom error page. That looks interesting. All right, so I'm going to minimize this and go back to Chrome. And I'm going to try that site again that was giving us that error message where we got too much information. So if I open that up, this is the error message we get now. So this means we have removed a loose lips situation, right? We're not providing too much information to the client. They don't need to know the directory structure of the web server. All right, so we've already done the verify stage. We've gone through and made sure everything is working much better. The only other thing we could do is part 15, where we could see if there's any of those other vulnerabilities that we've investigated already. So I'm going to go back to the default websites on here. Let's see what directory browsing is set up as. So if I open that up, oh, it's enabled, so I'm going to disable that. And let's see if there's anything else I should fix. Logging, that might be good. So if we go to logging, yep, the log files should fix that as well. So I think putting the log files on the C drive as opposed to in the web server root is a good idea. So that's a good fix. And the last thing was the FTP server, which we could do under Manage, remove roles and features, and then I won't finish this whole process, but inside of the web server settings, we would disable the FTP server. Next, we would restart, and then when this is done restarting, then the FTP service will be disabled. And that should be it for project 2.2.4.